the feed. All right, and you're going to see people start to come in under the attendees.
Got it.
All right, let's start that. And we're going to start this. Hi, everybody. Looks like people are starting to roll in here. Mike Cadger from Procurement Foundry and Kim Addington from NPI. Super excited for this next Topics in Technology. Every time we do one of these, we're setting new records in attendance. So absolutely thrilled. We've got the A team today to talk to you about software renewals. And obviously that is near and so that said, let me just get the live streams up and running on the Procurement Foundry social platforms for Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Tina is in the control room as always with us today. Tina is monitoring. Oh, and hi, we're back. How you doing? It's the same. You're on the same link that you were on before. I'm gonna hide her video. You know what? Just stay here, and Rick's coming in too. So who is? Does anyone know Rick? Did somebody give? Oh, Rick, are you there? I didn't see your video.
I'm here.
You're here. Okay, great.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Okay, Alan, who? I'm sorry, I forgot. What's your name from Alan?
Trace Lewis.
Okay,
Trace.
Hi, Trace. I'm sorry. I'm going to mute your video and just put you in the background with us, but stay where you are and you can stay right in the panel discussion if you want.
Okay, sorry.
No problem. Tina, did you already take care of that?
Yes, all set.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. All right. So let me just check the LinkedIn feed. Are we live on LinkedIn? Sorry, it's a little bit of a clunky start today. Usually it doesn't happen like this. Trace came in and I was like, she just threw me for a loop. I was like, oh my God, we have new people on the panel.
Mr. Guest.
Join in.
We have a mystery guest live. Sorry, Trace. Nice to meet you. All right, so wow, up to 60 people in the room already on our LinkedIn. And Tina, I'm just going to go into LinkedIn real quick and make sure.
We're live. We're live.
Oh, we're live.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. We're live and completely unorganized. I apologize to the panel. Okay, so that said, again, this is another version of Topics in Technology, which is our ongoing segment around technology and technology sourcing. Kim Addington is your host. She's with NPI. They were very, very kind and willing to do this for us. Kim is a well-seasoned professional at this point in running these panels. So it gives me a day off. I don't have to talk, even though I love technology. This is how this is going to work very quickly, just so that everybody knows. We have our in-studio audience, which is inside of our Zoom room here with 65, 67 people. And we're also live streaming out onto LinkedIn Live at the same time. So if you are watching on LinkedIn Live for this discussion, please feel free to put your questions into the LinkedIn Live feed. Tina will attempt to transcribe those in so that Kim can see them. And if you're in the room and you want to ask questions, Kim, how do you usually like to run that? Do you like to run the questions in the chat channel, or do you like to have them put in the Q&A?
Either way, I'm looking at it. So
okay, great. So Kim, as a true professional in web management, webinar management services, if you have a question, if you're one of the participants, please put it into the Q&A if possible. If not, put it in the channel in the chat. And I'm going to bow out, but everybody that's in the room inside the chat right now, just give us a shout out, tell us where you are, and that'd be great so we know kind of a geographic distribution in the chat. So, all right, everybody have a great show. Thank you so much. I apologize. That was a very long 5 minutes, and I'm going to bow out.
thanks, Mike. Okay, so I'm Kim Addington, moderator of our panel discussion today. I'm Chief Operating Officer at NPI. We are an Atlanta-based procurement advisory company that helps large enterprises get the best deal on their IT purchases. We've been doing it for 19 years now. The cornerstone of our service is price benchmark analysis to see how your quotes stack up against peer purchases. We analyzed over 17 billion in IT spend for our clients last year alone. 84% of the transactions they submitted to us showed material opportunity for improvement. And you could kind of think of us as the Kelley Blue Book of IT. We also provide license optimization advice and negotiation intel that helps empower our clients, IT buying teams for large enterprises to knock it out of the park every day. While we cover all IT subcategories, the majority of the spend we analyze is actually software spend. So it's very relevant to the conversation that we're about to have this morning. Every large enterprise on the planet is spending more on software today than at any time in history, and none of us see any end in sight to that growth trajectory. So today we're going to talk about the category from a procurement perspective. And while our focus will be on renewals, in reality, most of what we're going to cover is going to apply to new software purchases as well. So first, let's get to know our panelists so that you can understand what perspectives and experience they bring to the table. Brad, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience in the software category, and your role at Walmart.
Sure, can do. I've been doing software or technology procurement for well over 20 years. Been with 3 Fortune 100 companies, and now I'm lucky enough to be with Fortune 1. I'm responsible for all the global spend, so head of procurement for software globally for Walmart.
Cool, some serious chops there. Alan, tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience in software, and your role at Transamerica.
Sure. Hello, my name is Alan Poland. I've been in the enterprise software space for the better part of 30 plus years, supporting global financial and insurance services companies. Responsible for managing primarily the global enterprise software services commodity at Transamerica Life Insurance Company. Been with the company about 5 years, but previous to that was with 2 other Fortune 100 companies spanning over 34 years. I enjoy negotiating, challenging contracts and renewals. So this topic is going to be very near and dear to my heart. Tackling difficult problems, being out in front, improving operations and processes, mentoring and educating new employees, and leading teams in new directions. I obviously appreciate the opportunity to participate on the panel discussion with such great and talented experts. I think one of the most important takeaways from this session is you get the opportunity to network with your industry peers, listen and learn from these sessions on how you can improve things. So I think that's really important from my perspective.
Well, thank you very much.
You bet.
And Rich is my colleague at NPI. Tell us a little bit about your background, Rich, and your role at NPI.
Yeah, hi. So I've been with NPI for 19 years as a client services director. So in that capacity, I help customers navigate complex IT purchasing renewals. We help benchmark and provide targets. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to help negotiate on behalf of some of my customers. That's what I love to do. In my background, I used to, before 19 years ago, I ran some professional services for some companies, so some consulting companies. So I'm happy to be on the other side of the table, working with customers to help get the best deals possible.
Cool, thanks very much. So I've got a cheat sheet here that you'll see me referencing throughout our session today. And we did a prep session with this panel last week to just kind of think through what kinds of things, some catalyst questions that might be of interest to our audience. And then Procurement Foundry also put it out there to the community to say, what kinds of things would you like to cover? So in this list of questions are some great questions that came back from the community. So we're going to start. We have a great opener. I don't usually have a great opener, and it even has props. So Brad recently published a book. So I'm going to put it right in front of the camera here. Software, the silent killer of your company's budget. He published it late last year. And I'm just going to read you 2 things at the beginning that kind of set the stage here. The silent killer of your company's budget, how to negotiate and manage your software portfolio without getting taken advantage of by your suppliers. And then the next line says, every day more and more sourcing projects are becoming technology sourcing projects. I thought that's a provocative thought, and everybody probably nodding your heads now, yeah, that's really true. I mean, those of us have been doing this for 40 plus years. It's been a gradual evolution, but if you sit back and reflect on it for a little bit, you're like, wow, the world has changed so much from glass house IT to where it is today, to what it takes to run a large enterprise and all of the aspects of the business that it touches. And so much of it is software. So this is a great introduction. And the question I have for Brad is, let's warm up by hearing what motivated you to write this book.
Well, a little bit about that first statement you just said, right? Technology is getting in every deal almost. I used to be able to give examples way back in the day of there was no technology in the store shelves. I've got a lot of retail background, right? Well, then here comes the digital signage and digital pricing on store shelves. So I couldn't use that as my example of, and then I said, technology's everywhere, but, in the lights. Well, guess what? We're putting beacons, we're putting Bluetooth, we're putting Wi-Fi in our lighting systems now. We're running out of things that we don't embed technology and software into. Whether it be appliances, it just doesn't matter. And the industry has been so lopsided from the procurement perspective. I didn't put it in my book, but it's going to be in my next book. There's an early plug. That salespeople have about a 5,000 year advantage. We've always negotiated, and you've always heard the statements of everybody's in sales, so everybody negotiates as well. But, true procurement did not really start into existence until the 1950s. So I say that the sales guys have about a 5,000 year, advantage on us. And the technology giants that created the original contracts that they brought to our companies were so one-sided, still one-sided. And it just makes me mad when I see some of the things that get put into contracts that just tie our hands and we're not able to do anything about because contractually they've taken advantage of a situation.
Yeah,
Just to add, kudos to Brad for this. And I just want to say that if you've been in this space, the software space, for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, however long you've been, you need to get this book. It's good. And
Thank you.
I'm one to start it, but I've been like jumping from chapter 1 to chapter 5 to going back and forth. And you can see I've got some stuff tabbed off that we'll talk a little bit about that I felt like, in the book, these are really, key things, key takeaways as you really think through renewals and new purchases and all that kind of good stuff.
so why don't you expand on that a little bit? Like what things jumped out at you? And let's start to get to the meat of the matter and talk about.
Yeah, no. I think that, so specifically, page 29, early engagement with procurement, that is so key. I know we at Transamerica, we try to get our internal business partners engage us early. We've recently had a new CFO come on board, and he has not only sent a public broadcast out to all of Transamerica to get in procurement engaged early, but really and truly, we've got some new mechanisms in place, spend control tower, some other things where our internal business partners really cannot move forward without us. And I think that that's really, really an important one. That's on page 29 of the book.
Can you talk about, I found that in our prep session, you mentioned the spend control tower. Talk a little bit more about that, because you just started it last year. What are the criteria and how has the rollout gone? Because I think that's a cool concept that a lot of our audience might really be interested in learning more about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, really it allows for that extra level of review and approval with not only your business stakeholders, but different executives. And once the JIRA ticket or whatever, however your request comes through, once that's in the system and in moving, our spend control tower has to approve it before the JIRA ticket can even be entered. So in other words, we may have some early engagement with us and the business partner to go out and get them pricing, not necessarily negotiate the pricing, but at least get the quote, understand what the pricing looks like, so it can move forward to the spend control tower. But it's a series of approvals, and we at Transamerica, we go with anything greater than 50K will have to go and get spend control tower approval, and that's not only software, but that's even services. So we're using the spend control tower in full format right now.
And that's a finance function that rolls up to finance?
Finance function, correct.
But that's amazing that you've got executive level support like that to send out the notification stuff. That's worth its weight in gold, because the technology salespeople are trained to avoid you and avoid that interaction as much as possible.
Absolutely.
They don't ask a question by accident. And they know exactly how to penetrate your leaders and business partners that you're trying to support.
Right. And even in our environment, I remember when we first started the spend control towers, this is kind of funny just to throw a little humor into it, but we had business partners, internal business clients entering JIRA tickets and putting a fake spend control tower clearance ID number just to get it through the system. Well, we got very smart to that early on. And we put some, you know, like required fields in JIRA and so forth when they put the request. And so they really can't get past that unless they've got that approval. So it's just another extra layer of approval. And we'll, as we get into this discussion, I think there are some other things too that are really important. Like if you're dealing with privately held companies, are you doing financial risk assessments before you move this forward on a new purchase? Obviously, it's a little bit different if you're doing a renewal and you've already, you know, they're an existing supplier, but I think that those are some of the real important things from a spend control tower approval perspective.
Yeah, to that point, we talked about this in the prep a little bit. I think one of the things that that's missed a lot with renewals, especially, is the preparation. So getting in early, getting it to procurement early to enable you to take a look at that contract, see what the terms are. And we always recommend to our customers doing a leverage assessment. So people tend to do that with a new purchase, but they fail to do it on the renewal side. And things such as the need, do you have other options? Is the timing working against you? How much investment? Do you have a larger footprint? Do you have other competing products in-house that allow you to use as leverage as well? I mean, if you have a Microsoft EA, you might have some security type of applications that could compete against who your current renewal is with, things of that nature. So preparation, having that tower that you use is really key to getting started, instead of just waiting for that renewal to come in and be reacting to it where you don't have the bandwidth, you know, in time, and things are going to get shut off. They're threatening to shut it off. So you need that preparation time.
And frequently, to add to that a little bit, by the time you get the notifications or the business alerts you to it or anything like that, you've missed your notification period.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, the notification period in my mind is the single most important thing in any contract, because if you blow past that, not just the renewal date, right? It's the actual notification period that's in the contract. You have got a lot bigger uphill battle in negotiating if you want to reduce or eliminate that contract. Can it be done? Yep, it can be done. Is it ugly? Is it a lot of extra effort? Absolutely.
How do you guys feel about auto renewals? You know, at NPI, we're a small business, right? So one of the things that rolls up to me is the contracts function for all the technology we buy to run our business. And my best practice for our company is I negotiate out as many of the auto renewals as I can. I get rid of them so that we don't find ourselves in that position. But I also add in an escalator cap as a protection for myself, that if we choose to renew, that the renewal won't be any more than X% higher than what we had been paying. Is that something that you guys view as viable in a large enterprise, or do you like auto renewals so that they're a protection against suddenly falling off a cliff? Although very few software suppliers are going to cut you off at the knees, you know, if you go past the end time. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think auto renewals are a thing of the past. I think there's some advantages and some disadvantages, more disadvantages than anything. I mean, good example, you have an auto renewal set up and on a 3-year deal, and the business owner has left the company. So, or there's been a change and they've decided not to use the tool any longer, the software any longer. There's disadvantages because you can be caught in an auto renewal situation where you don't want to auto renew, where you don't want it to auto renew, and you know, you get stuck having to pay for another year or having to get out of 2 more years of an auto renewal with a supplier. I mean, it's just, I don't know, you know, Rich, what you think, or Brad, what you think on auto renewals, but we try to negotiate them out and try to encourage our business owners not to agree to any auto renewals at all.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a lot of times termination clauses are 90 days prior to the renewal. They don't notify the auto renewal until 30 days prior, and then you're stuck.
Yep.
So unless you're really on top of all of your renewals or renewal dates and have some tickler jumping at you saying you need to check, or do you definitely want to renew this, 120 days ahead of time so that you can get yourself ahead of that. Auto renewal just causes issues for you, and then you're stuck. You have no choice.
Virtually every kind of click through, these are the terms and conditions. So your Salesforce, your standard Salesforce order form, right? It just looks like a nice little innocent order form with the price and then, your term. Okay, we agreed to 3 years to get this really nice price. And you click through to those master terms and conditions, and guess what? It says right there, if you don't tell us X days before, you're signed up for another 3 years, whether you like it or not. And it's virtually in every single one. And we have to, for example, in our Salesforce instance, it's right there on the form that auto renew is not going to happen.
Hey, Brad, what are you guys doing at Walmart? It'd be interesting to hear your perspective on this.
Yeah, we've got a lot of old contracts that have some of those things, but I think the key we do not promote it, do not agree with it, on net new. And I think one of the key things that I want to talk about with this is anytime you're handing a supplier money at a renewal is a key point. Get some of those things changed. You're the customer. People tend to forget that because of the attitude some of the salespeople have. You're the customer. You're handing over money. Get some of these things changed that you need to have changed. That's the time to do it when you're writing them a check. Regardless of what it is, there's tons of different things that you can do there. But even the old bad contracts, you can change over time. And that's the key. Just keep making them better and better and better every time you write a PO to them.
Agree. Yeah, thanks for your perspective on that. I mean, as far as the caps and the escalations, I mean, we at Transamerica we try to go in flat. I mean, we won't even agree to an increase.
Right.
And if we do have to agree to one, it's 2%, 3%. I mean, those days of the 10%, 12% increase, those are long gone. Yep. Don't agree to any of that.
Yeah. And if you saw that in my book, I have a real hard time believing that if the IT suppliers that we're using are doing their job and they have any decent sourcing and people, they will see a reduction in their costs year over year of somewhere between 8 and 12%, because the cost of data transmission's cheaper, the cost of data storage is cheaper, everything's the SaaS cloud now. Anyway, why do they get to keep, when they're making big money, why do they get to keep those year over year increases off of our volumes and data? They should be sharing that back with us. Yeah. We should be getting a cut of that, in my opinion. That I can't tell you how many internal customers I've had push back on that, because that's not fair. I would disagree that, to your point, the worst case scenario should be flat year over year.
Yep. Yeah.
There's kind of two pathways I'm thinking about here. Let's go down this one path. You mentioned cloud. It's interesting to reflect on how software renewals have changed. 12 years ago, we were really talking maintenance support renewals, because you bought those perpetual licenses. Now, I think we've crossed the tipping point where the bulk of your renewals are subscription renewals. And so the stakes are even higher, right? Than just managing these maintenance renewals. It's just kind of transformed that your renewals today are your relicensing. You're almost starting from scratch each time you do a renewal. So it's much more like a new purchase than the old days of renewals. What other changes have you guys seen over the past 10 years and trends, and as this has evolved?
But I mean, the great news with the cloud is, when they sold it to you, it's consumption based, right? So you only pay for what you use. BS. There's minimums. Total BS. There's minimums. They will not allow it. They will fight tooth and nail. They'll find a clause in the contract. And it's a little bit unfortunate the way the government has set up the accounting principles for them to recognize revenue.
Yep.
They use that as a big club, which is unfortunate, but the SaaS I think it's 3.2 to 3.4 years is what all of my calculations wind up, is how long you would have to own a perpetual license to equal a SaaS. So SaaS is their money makers. That's their fat. You're absolutely right. You're rebuying it every year, but how do you negotiate truly consumption-based? Because that's what we're hearing in the marketplace. This is a consumption-based license. So that means we should be able to spin it up or spin it down. It's just not that easy.
You can only spin it up in most cases, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, interesting. So let's keep on kind of best practices here. One related thought to preparation is getting stakeholder alignment. And I know for a fact from being on the enterprise IT vendor side for 20 years, we focus on training our sales organizations. You know, it's a finely tuned sales machine, trained to extract the most revenue they can from customers. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, that's their job, right? So counterbalanced by, okay, we need to bring, you know, equal strength to the negotiating table. And if you're late in the game, the good sales organizations have already infiltrated the business owners of this purchase. So it puts you at a real disadvantage. So a best practice that we see all the time, and, you know, we work with so many clients, Rich works with so many clients, that the ones that really have great alignment between the business owners and the procurement organization and get in front of it. So some of the things you're doing, Alan, at Transamerica, really, like, you know, collaborating on budgeting, collaborating on the spend tower. So you're so in front of it that you get the opportunity to align the resources so that around a shared vision of what you're trying to accomplish and not put yourself at a disadvantage.
Right. I also think that if you can get that early engagement and have those pre-discussions, I think one of the also more important things is make sure your internal business partners aren't having conversations with the suppliers and without engaging you in that conversation. Obviously, you want to be at the table. Always, procurement always should be at the table between the business part, the internal business client, procurement, and the supplier. You definitely don't want them getting in discussions, especially around negotiations, around pricing and terms and conditions and all that without procurement at the table. I think that's really important.
Yeah, we've even seen with very large negotiations that, and as Kim mentioned, they're highly trained. So you've got internally, we know what the vendor side's doing. You know, we all came from there, so we came from the dark side, as we call it. But what they're doing is they're doing a risk assessment, right? So if you're pushing back on certain things, they want to find out what's real. Is it credible? Is it not credible? And a lot of times they will actually go to the lengths of assigning different levels of people in their organization, in the vendor's organization, to contact different folks in your organization at that level, and they're going to ask the same questions. So I've actually called them several times because we promote team alignment all the time with our customers, and we get together and make sure that everybody's on the same page with what the strategy is. And if they contact you, this is what you say, even at lower levels of folks who are just getting support from that vendor, because they're going to do a little water cooler talk and try to extract information from them. Hey, what are your plans? Listen, I know you have this issue going on over here. What are your plans? And if they start blabbing, yeah, we're going to expand, we're going to be doing this and this and this, it's killing your negotiation. And they don't know it. They don't actually realize it a lot of time. So
agree with you, Brent.
Catching that early and making sure they know if they say this, just go dark or just say, I don't know, whatever, depending on their role.
Agree, Rich. I mean, we've even had suppliers approach our internal business clients with DocuSign documents, trying to get them to sign order forms and quotes and agreements before procurement's even engaged. So we've kind of got the lion's share of our internal business clients fairly trained in that, hey, don't just delete these things, or at least let us know that they're trying to send something through for signature, and because procurement handles all the docu-signing and so forth as far as signature authorities go.
I'm a big believer in checklists and things like that. And I think any renewal, like we're talking about here today, as a procurement professional, you should have a checklist to send to your internal stakeholders. You need to know, are they using more, are they using less, what the roadmap is, budgets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I also send along, and it's on page 33, never tell a vendor list. Just simple little things. And you'd be surprised how many times I hear, well, I didn't think about that.
Yep.
I did tell them my budget, but they got it out of me in a real sneaky little way or something.
Yep.
It's highly, highly trained professionals you're dealing against, and they had a 5,000-year advantage. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, not sharing with the supplier. I mean, we hear that a lot. We hear a lot of that whole, oh, well, they, so-and-so told us, what you have in the budget this year for spend on this renewal or this new purchase. And it's like, sometimes when we go back to the internal business clients, the story's a little different. But we try to get them trained early on that, hey, don't share any of that kind of information.
Otherwise, you have to unwind it all.
Correct.
In a credible way. And that's a lot more difficult than if they didn't divulge information to begin with.
Yeah. There are some tricks you can use, but it is challenging. We got a question, and it kind of goes back a step to an earlier topic. How are the panelists navigating price increases with the inflation argument from salespeople? Any tips there?
So from our perspective, we kind of look at that with a little bit of a grain of salt. We really, we kind of feel like in terms of the pricing's the pricing, and we try not to get too caught up in this whole inflation thing. I mean, if you want, you could throw it back at them and say, well, we're in a big cost cutting initiative right now. So, and typically that's what we do. I mean, and we are at Transamerica, the last couple of years, we've been in a major cost cutting initiative mode. And there's thousands of initiatives going on within Transamerica to find better ways to save money, to cut costs, and so forth. So we kind of use that as an advantage when they come in and they say, well, inflation, or, we're putting more development time into the software, so we need to increase our prices. We try to really kind of play up against that. And I don't know, we try to take it as an advantage for us when you're negotiating.
Software is kind of interesting in that respect, because, the hardware vendors, it makes sense. But software, not so much, because you already built it. Now, of course, depending on what sort of, what kind of features are being added, for these leading enterprise software companies, their costs are decreasing to deliver to you at a macro level, to deliver to you, to Brad's point earlier, what they're delivering to you. And the argument really doesn't hold water.
Yeah.
No, but to your point, hardware vendors, they've got chip shortages. So a lot of it sometimes depends on your options. One of the questions you throw back at them was, how long is it going to take you to deliver your product now? Okay, you got to hit chip. So if there are more viable alternatives to it that are credible, you can negotiate against some of those increases, because if they can't get you the product within the proper time frame, then you're going to have to look elsewhere.
Yeah, it's a supply and demand thing. It's just look at cars. I mean, it's hard to go find a car, right? And it's surprising how many car dealerships want to buy a used car from you.
Yeah, crazy.
So
here's another topic we discussed in our prep session. Alan, Transamerica is in the middle of a big sourcing project right now, as you consider replacing your GL and accounting system that you've used for 40 years with a newer generation of technology. Mm-hmm. So that puts you smack dab in the middle of this migration from on-premise to cloud. And also, I mean, this is a big deal, this initiative. So talk to us about some of your key challenges there as you think about our audience trying to get some nuggets and best practices around approaching that kind of a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it is probably one of the most highly visible projects we're working on right now. We've been through the RFI, RFP process. You've got other SIs involved in delivering the implementation, and most of these we're looking at are some of the bigger players. But I think that looking at all the things that's in Brad's book, when you consider these types of bigger projects, it's important to not only look at cost, but look at the ease of transitioning to the cloud. You also have to look at what else is involved. Do you have other applications that are tied into the GL, into the finance software? So I think that there's just a ton of variables you have to consider when you're looking at big projects like this. I mean,
Yeah, and what kind of timeline do you have for when you started and when you think you're going to make a decision?
Right. So we've got, so I've laid out a specific timeline project plan for just the procurement activities, which would feed into the bigger project plan, because there's so many, from a technology standpoint, there's so many technical things that are involved: architecture, information security, third-party risk management, compliance. So I think that there's so many variables and touch points. I think, on an implementation of this size, we've been using this software for 40 years and finally moving to the cloud. But that's an 18 to 24 month implementation. Easy.
Yeah.
So, we've been working on this for some time now. And we're looking at like a go live date of January 1st, 2025. So, you've got so many things to consider implementing a new software application like this.
Yeah.
And we're not only looking from a GL perspective, we actually have a whole project underway to look at all of our software application that we're using that's on-prem and moving and shifting to the cloud. So we're doing a big cloud shift, and we have been over the last year and will for the next few years.
Yeah, that as most enterprises are. We see it every day at NPI. I'm going to open up maybe a can of worms. That how is InfoSec impacting you? Even at NPI, like right now, our customers share with us their agreements and quotes, right, which is confidential information, and we have big angry agreements between us and our clients that cover all that stuff. But now InfoSec is getting into the equation, the whole sourcing process and the whole service delivery process. As you're procuring cloud-based technology and your data is going to be over here now as opposed to on-premise, I got to believe that that's a real factor in overcoming that. Hurdle's probably the wrong word for it, because it's all about protecting your companies and your data. But particularly, we're seeing it kind of coming from Europe here. So companies with a big European presence. So, Transamerica, you're a subsidiary of Aegon, which is based in Europe, I believe.
Yep.
So it's becoming a real significant piece of the sourcing process. Not that you have to do it, but that it has to be slotted in and overcome to move things forward. Is that true for you guys in practice?
I'm going to assume Rich has more exposure to this than, because I'm isolated into one environment, and our environment does contemplate all those things, obviously, especially with any PII or anything like that. But I'm assuming Rich being able to see multiple healthcare, maybe, and other industries that have more exposure. But we do a significant a bit of research before we launch anything in our.
Yeah. Do you see it holding things up, Rich, or kind of an emerging step or challenge?
Yeah, one of the things when a company's healthcare organizations is a good. Definitely a good industry for this. They've got to go through security protocols and looking into that while they're doing RFIs, RFQs. They're having to do that ahead of time, And so that lengthens the procurement process, obviously. And then sometimes I think it gives vendors a false sense of security, for fun, because they feel like, oh, we passed all these tests, we're in, kind of thing. So so it adds to it, and then sometimes it adds a little bit to the complexity of the negotiation, because they start getting a little bit more confidence of how much time you've had to invest with them, how much time they've invested in this process, and then they push back on pricing a little bit because of how much they've invested in. And so it's just something that you have to be aware of.
Yeah.
The life cycle gets a little larger, and it changes the vendor's mindset a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
I think also from a information security, third-party risk management, compliance perspective, and even architecture, throw them in. I think those four, here at Transamerica, we are a heavily regulated company, and we literally have all of those groups checking off on renewals, new purchases, involved in redlining on contracts. It's just so important. And if you don't have them involved, you probably should start getting them involved as part of normal practice. But yeah, we've got, I would call it a fairly well-oiled machine working right now with all of the stakeholder and SME engagement.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to shift gears now to early in the what we got back from the community. There were a couple of questions around VARs and how can you effectively use VARs, and what are the special considerations. Let me read a couple of things plus a question that's just come in, and then I'll direct it to one of you to start. So let's see here. Here's the first question that came in. How does working with multiple vendors for an RFQ work in software? For instance, if I want to renew some license, what is the effect of sending the RFQ to one reseller versus several resellers and waiting for the best quote? Then I'd like to look at an understanding of tier 1 VARs. What value can they offer, including savings, optimal licensing and maintenance, consolidation, audit assistance? And then this question here, how do you leverage your supplier partner relationships, especially with VARs, while also not giving too much away? We ask our partners, especially VARs, to be more proactive and add more value than transactional operations, transactional quoting. This particular person wants more from a VAR, value add. But then we don't want to share our roadmap or give them contact with our engineers. How do we balance both of those goals? So, Rich, let's start with you. How much VAR activity do you see in the clients that you work with? And
yeah, so to hit the first question, as far as putting out RFQs for resellers, the problem there when deals are especially renewals, when you have a vendor of record or it's a registered deal, sometimes it's a wasted effort, to be honest, because the vendor, the OEM, has a pretty solid relationship with their VARs typically, and they protect their VARs. So I don't see much value in RFQs out to different resellers, depending on what the type of purchase is, or certainly a renewal. We typically recommend to negotiate directly with the OEM, and one of the main reasons is the way VARs get compensated. A lot of times they'll get compensated, say a Cisco VAR, they get compensated at 3 to 4 points of list. So if you really think about it, regardless of what you're paying, they're getting the same amount anyway, number one. So are they the best negotiators on your behalf? Maybe because they like you and they take you to lunch, and to be a VAR, it's value-added reseller. So to the last person's question, they are an important part because they have to add value. And if they start becoming an order taker and they're not adding value by either helping you with looking into and educating you on new technologies and helping you architect solutions and helping provide some free services, since they're a VAR for they could be a VAR for you for multiple solutions. They ought to be giving back to you because they're making money being order takers, and they have to add that And kind of the last question where you don't want to give them too much information, that's a slippery slope, right? So if they're helping you architect a solution, they need access to your engineers. They need to talk through things. The main thing that I feel that needs to be communicated to your engineers is to make sure you're not giving away any real concrete plans. Oh, yes, we're definitely going with this solution, definitely going with that. They're just learning, absorbing, and we need to meet to make decisions as a team and to keep all that close.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that. Alan, one thing you are a proponent of is third-party intel on what's happening in the market. And full disclosure, Transamerica is an NPI client, and they get that through us. So if you could talk a little bit about that, but also on the flip side, one of the Procurement Foundry community people asked, what if we don't have access to that? We don't have budget for it. Is there any way to gain visibility into this piece of information that we're really missing around, what are peer purchases in the market looking like, and, how do you negotiate effectively with a particular supplier? So any thoughts you can share, Alan?
Yeah, and I do want to come back to a couple of Rich's comments on the VAR resellers, but let's talk about the whole market research thing right now. So yes, we are a customer of NPI. We've been a customer for a while. I've been to certain conferences where NPI has been the sponsor. Information is always invaluable. We are to the point now where on most of our larger deals, we won't even move forward unless we engage NPI. The information that we've gotten, and we've done it, I think I've done 3 renewals with NPI over the last 3 years. But we've looked at other ones like Gartner and Forrester and Burton Group, and there's just a ton of them out there. But we feel like, the little information we give to NPI, the lot of information we get back is just invaluable for us. And that actually is a checkbox that we will not move forward and tell our executives on that contract summary approval before they sign that they want to know, hey, did we talk to NPI? What did they say? What did we gain? What did we learn? What did we save additional? So I would encourage you, if you're looking at market research, if you don't have it in your budget, add it now or add it for next year in the years out. It's money well spent. You'll learn a lot. You'll be able to go back and have a better negotiation discussion with the supplier. And all the times that we've gotten the information back in the FMV report from NPI, every time we've gone back to a supplier, we've gone back and asked for more stuff and we've gotten it. So I think the intel is incredible. I think that you really do need to consider it. You need to budget for it. You need to plan for it. I don't know. We kind of weighed out NPI versus Gartner. Gartner's a good organization, but we felt like, not being biased, but we felt like NPI, we got better information, better intel from NPI.
Well, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Yeah. So tell us, you had some more things you wanted to on our discussion.
Right. So I agree with Rich and Brad. I don't know what your viewpoint on this is, but we try to engage. I mean, sometimes you're stuck in a situation where you have to engage a VAR reseller because they won't allow you to go direct. So you're kind of stuck in that. And even though they tell us that, we try to challenge that a little bit, okay. But we really do, when we have to go with a VAR or reseller, and we've got, certain ones, Software House International, Insight, those are kind of our software ones. We use Sirius as well. But we really try to pull out of those VARs and resellers, what is the true value that you're delivering? Because if you're just rubber stamping something and we're just giving you a PO and there's no value delivered, we really challenge that hard. So.
And is that procurement that's doing that?
Yes, procurement.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that some smaller companies, mid-sized companies, don't have the technology procurement staffs that you can lean on the VARs a little bit more. I'm not, I complete agreement with Alan. We really don't use them that much unless we're forced to use them in certain situations, or for what I call weirdware. If I'm buying 2 of something or 10 of something that we just want to test it out, super, run it through there. Let's see what it does, how it grows.
Yeah, agree. And if to us, if it's something that's $100 or $500, I mean, sometimes we'll throw it over to a reseller just for simplicity's sake. There's times where on some of those a little bit more expensive or higher dollar, we will go out and get 2 quotes. We'll get one from Software House International and one from Insight. And there's a ton of VARs and good resellers out there.
Yeah,
agreed.
You run a risk sometimes. I've got clients that have the same VAR for multiple solutions. So even if they're looking at multiple OEMs for the same thing, they're going through the same VAR. Well, in ways that's caution, because that can hurt your negotiations because they know too much.
Yeah.
So if they're the one that's working with 2 different vendors that are supposedly competing against each other, the VAR is incented to get a deal too, right? They're incented to get some deal. They don't, whether they care or not which direction you go, it's just a caution that's not the best way to negotiate. You don't negotiate with the VAR to the OEM, especially in scenarios like that.
Yeah. Backing up just a little bit and getting it back to the renewals and RFPs, I'm a firm believer as one of the negotiation tactics at a big renewal is to understand your notification period, work with the supplier. If they can't be focused on your deal, or they think, that they don't have a chance of losing the business, send an RFP out on the renewal. I don't care if you just send it to them. It is a lever that you can pull to get their attention and recreate focus.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think also on the timing, I mean, we've really, over the last couple of years, we've pushed our internal stakeholders, get that JIRA ticket in, whether it's a renewal, a new purchase, what have you. We say just straight up 120 days before. I mean, you've got it, especially on a renewal.
Yeah.
And I'm not to say that, tomorrow we may get a JIRA request for a renewal that is due next week. I mean, we get those rogue ones still coming in, but we try to course correct that and say, okay, we're going to help you this time, of course, but next year in the following years, you really need to do a better job of planning. So,
yeah. And another phenomenon we're seeing, and this is a clear trend at NPI, the preparation for SaaS renewals. One thing to consider, so we're talking really Salesforce, Workday, SuccessFactors, O365, Adobe, for large estates of end user tools. One thing that's becoming really important is to identify, like a year ahead of time, start doing analysis to get toxic spend identified and do housekeeping. I don't care how good you are at software asset management, it gets away from you. So we had one of our clients is one of the largest CPG companies in the world, really amazing SAM practices, but decided as a best practice to do a license optimization assessment of their, I think it was O365, I can't remember, O365 or Salesforce. And we found 4 million in toxic spend, licenses assigned to people that don't work there anymore. And, particularly Salesforce, you have all these orgs. It just gets away from you. And it's a really strongly recommended best practice to however you do it, whether it's your internal people, although it's a rotten job because it's really very manual, tedious. It's like going through a phone bill and figuring out which things are at the wrong plan and which lines haven't been used. You want to pay somebody else to do that. And there are people, we do it, other people do it, that I really encourage you for those particular estates to be thinking about a year out conducting a license optimization assessment, because then you're not autopilot renewing everything you already bought. Typically, we're finding between 10 and up to 40% toxic spend. So then you pull that back down, you make sure that all of the right license types are assigned, because your salespeople are going to try to sell you more than you need in terms of the horsepower of the license types and the number of licenses. So pull that demand baseline back down to reality and then, do your growth projection on top of that versus just keep floating this boat higher without, assessing what's going on in your install base. So that's another kind of tip for people to consider. We're at 4 minutes left here. So I want to give each of our panelists an opportunity to share just one final thought with you. So we'll circle around. And one thing that Alan talked about as we were just chatting ready before we were turning the session on today, he said, this is such a broad topic. We may want to do a part 2. So I would like to encourage everybody that's listening today, if you want to do a part 2, give Procurement Foundry some feedback and the kinds of things that you'd like to talk about, or feel free to give NPI some feedback. NPIfinancial.com is where we are. And we'll be happy to schedule another session if it will be valuable to people. So I'm going to ask Alan first, but I also want to share with you guys, see all those cool pictures behind him? So what we learned in the prep session, we're like, what is that? He, from when he was 17, see if I get this right, Alan, till 2020, till the pandemic.
Yep.
At the beginning, it was his job, then I think it became a side hustle. Those are all photographs of bands. He used to be the guy. So there's Barbra Streisand, AC/DC. I don't know. Give us some other examples of the photos that are on your wall there, and then give us one nugget of what takeaway do you want the audience to have? If you could say one thing.
Yeah. And I said it early. Just appreciate the opportunity to participate with great talented experts. I do agree that these sessions are really, really invaluable. It doesn't make a difference how much time you've got in the industry. We love to hear people that are just starting. We love to hear people from people that are, have got 20, 30, 40 years experience, because I think there's just so much information to share. And I think honestly, this whole topic of software renewals, software purchases could quite possibly expand into like a second, third, fourth discussion, because there's just so much to talk about. And I feel like we've missed so much. Brad and Rich, you probably would agree. There's just so much, but I just want to say thank you for having me and allowing me to participate. I definitely welcome the opportunity to participate in follow-on sessions and would love to hear. And it's too bad we couldn't get to all these questions, because I'm reading a lot of these questions as other people have been talking. And unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to, answer a lot of these, but
hopefully we'll get some feedback that says
sure.
people want more. So Rich, what's one takeaway you'd like to leave people with?
Yeah, so I kind of started off a little bit with preparation is kind of the key to negotiating, whether it's a renewal or a new purchase. Leverage assessments, understand what they're doing on their side. So the vendor's doing that, they're doing everything that works against you, and you need to combat that in the same manner. So that's
same level of preparation as they bring to the table. Okay, and Brad, you're the published expert on all of this. So what's the one takeaway? You buy the book.
Read the book.
I just want to break even on the dang thing.
Amazon.com.
I had no idea how much it cost to publish a book. The one thing I'll say that is a big red flag every time I see it is be aware if your supplier contacts you and wants you to do an early renewal. If you got a 3-year deal, they're going to try and do it in year 2, at the end of year 2, just to lock you down and lock you down and lock you down. So be aware of any early renewal recommendations coming from your suppliers.
I think that's a good one, Brad. And be careful. And to that point, be careful with suppliers that try to do that to you, because then they start trying to introduce, and they do that. They've got some tactic around that. They try to introduce new products and all that kind of stuff. I'm going through 2 of those right now, and it's just like, don't play into that game.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
Thank you much for having us.
Thank you again.
Thank you for being here. It was a great session.
I just wanted to jump back in and say thank you to everybody today. It was an amazing session. We've hit new all-time highs, I think, in webinar and on LinkedIn. I definitely think we can do a follow-up to this. And don't forget that inside of the Procurement Foundry, we actually have a channel inside of Procurement Foundry where we have about 1,500 people. That is the technology sourcing channel inside of the Slack community, where if you have questions, you can ask those questions there. I know quite a few of the panelists are actually in the Slack community collaboration channel as well. I know Brad is in there and often takes questions. So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And if you know if you are watching this today and you're not in Procurement Foundry, you can go to procurementfoundry.com and request a membership. We do vet all of our members, so we don't have any salespeople inside of Procurement Foundry. It is a sales-free zone. And if you are just following us on LinkedIn, just remember you're in the line outside of the really cool club. You're not actually in the cool club yet. Okay, so that's it for now. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time. I know how valuable it is, and I took away about 15 really good nuggets. I'd like to do one thing. Tina is in the back in the control room. Tina, what I'd like to do is, if it's okay with Brad, I'd like to give away 5 of Brad's books to someone who attended the conference today. So we will randomly select 5 people. Brad, we'll get with you. We'll buy 5 of the books. We'll try and get you to break even on the book, and we'll get some people some knowledge on the book. So we will personally give away from Procurement Foundry 5 copies of the book today to someone. Brad, is it electronically downloadable or is it only in hard copy right now?
No, it's Amazon. It's electronic and hard copy.
Okay, great. So we can give away electronic downloads to folks, Tina, on a global basis. All right, great. Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Alan. I want a tour of that wall sometime soon. And Rich, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
See you.
Thank you.